Hey, welcome to another episode of Let's Innovate for Vegas, episode 5, recorded on March 24th, 2023. Another episode solo by yours truly, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. Odds and ends for March 2023. What has gone on for this month? Well, we've had a few things, a couple of good things, mostly, nothing really bad, so that's nice. We have been actually doing this unofficially for a year. We attempted to become a brigade of, once again, of CodeFor America as CodeFor Vegas, which was a brigade from 2014 to 2016, working with the city on open data, which will figure into most of the things we do. That was way back when. So we started in January of 2022 to reboot as CodeFor Vegas, and then we formed CodeFor Vegas Foundation in June 2022. So right in the middle there in March, we kicked off our first efforts to get some projects going, get some hackathons, make some plans, and so on. So we've actually been doing this stuff for about a year. And so good times. Open Transit was our very first foray. It continues to be an important project. I wish more people would work on it. Maybe that'll change. So we have our first hardware hackathon in the books, I should say. How about that? From the end of February, the smart bus pass idea that we came up with on Sunday is something we're continuing to look at as far as how it integrates with the connected city, the infrastructure planning here in Las Vegas, which I will talk about in a moment. And as came up yesterday, well, I guess I'm getting to it right now, at the Connected City Tour, which was in one room. So it was a tour of discussion, not of ambulation. Is that a word? So we talked a lot yesterday on the 23rd about how Las Vegas infrastructure is developing into the future, how we're using federal dollars and local interests to develop a stronger network infrastructure, equal access, unserved, underserved, quality of service, access to government services using CBRS and laying of fiber. So a lot of things going on. And I was talking to somebody from Henderson, and I said, for the record, we are not limiting to just the city of Las Vegas. In fact, the city of Las Vegas hasn't been overwhelmingly supportive. There are a couple of individuals, Don Jacobson, Anthony Willis. There are a few people that have actually been responsive. Don has been obviously, well, not obvious if you don't know, but Don has been super supportive, and just generally Don Jacobson. If there is a benchmark somewhere, the label next to it is Don Jacobson. But in general, we are pretty much independent. We're a completely standalone, independent, nonprofit public charity. So our CodeFor America adventures ended pretty annoyingly, and that's an ongoing thing for CodeFor America with their change of direction in brigades in general, and that's something we probably will talk about in another episode. But the take home is that when we say we're Innovate for Vegas, that should probably be best taken as the way the world sees Vegas. Everyone thinks that the Strip is Las Vegas. They really don't delve deeper into administrative boundaries and official city of versus unincorporated county versus city of Henderson, for example, city of North Las Vegas. These things are interesting if you're local, but from the outside perspective, Vegas is a sort of a label for a place that people see pictures of and often fly into in an airport labeled LAS and now called the Harry Reid International Airport, located not in Las Vegas. So Innovate Vegas is really about something larger than the city of Las Vegas. And so that's something to keep in mind as we start talking to more and more people about more and more things and more projects and how everything will fit together and how we can take advantage of the infrastructure they're putting in place to develop our own projects that make use of for the people of Las Vegas, the populace at large. The populace often doesn't even know about these things, and that's a general problem. But They may not have any idea how infrastructure is laid out and how it was paid for by federal dollars. They do care that they can use the internet, that they can access information, especially if there's homeschooling or remote working and other even more important things like watching TikTok and and YouTube videos. So the stuff we are working on is bigger than the city of Las Vegas. It's more state of mind, I suppose. So our projects are volunteer powered. That means that everything we do, from me and Sean Looker, who I will mention in a moment in greater detail, we are unpaid. We are completely volunteer based, and all of our time and energies, especially the time I spend documenting and writing specs and creating projects and having meetings, managing our monthly hackathon meetup, all these things are completely uncompensated for the sake of our projects and our participants and making Las Vegas a better Las Vegas, making our smart city smarter. Sometimes that's lost on people. They don't see how volunteer time that isn't theirs has value. So it's an ongoing process to get people involved so that they see how what they do impacts what other people are doing. So that's just something we'll continue to do as we get more people, hopefully, involved with what we're working on. I mentioned Sean Looker. Sean Looker was the co-founder and co-captain of CodeFor Vegas way back when. He is our other board member. I hope to have him on a podcast episode, hopefully in early April. He is moving. He lives in Tennessee currently. He's moving to another place. I won't go into too much detail, but we'll try to fit in an hour or so, have a chat, talk about what CodeFor Vegas was doing back then, how much of a challenge it can be to get continuous or at least some sort of useful level of commitment of volunteer time, and what we hope to do into the future. So that'll be another discussion with a guest after what I hope will be a visit from Mary Norris, who was our first contact with the CodeFor America infrastructure. Generally, while there were official people working with brigades, strangely, they don't work for CodeFor America anymore. But all roads lead through and to and through a discussion with Mary Norris. So she is a rather prolific member of the former brigade infrastructure. She's well known. She's well respected. She is very knowledgeable. She has been there. She has done that. She has all of the t-shirts. So I'm hopefully I will be able to get some time with Mary. It was supposed to be this week, but Mary does more things than I do, which is difficult to believe, hard to fathom. True it is. So we'll see about Mary getting on here. But something that I will talk to Mary about definitely is how she has managed the two brigades that she is part of, former brigades, and what does it mean to have volunteers who work on things and then disappear, or how do we get commitment so that we can actually deliver things? You know, working halfway on a project, starting a project and not finishing it, these are not great job skills. And part of our goal is to develop real job skills that people can use when they're innovating, either as an employee of some company or as a self-employed consulting type person or as an entrepreneur, maybe starting something new, maybe solving a problem in real life. In general, our entire attribution model is focused on giving credit for work done so that does lead to employment or other benefits, other upsides. And if we have volunteers who never show up, that doesn't go on the resume, I suppose. Or if it does, that's not so good. So there's often a connection is not often made. How about that? That if one person volunteers time with other volunteers, that those other volunteers are spending some of their time on the original volunteer, right? So if I volunteer to work on a project with 10 other people, the first thing that I need to do is onboard. So time is spent getting me up to speed. And this doesn't have to be code, by the way. It could be anything. Some people might help by answering questions, by joining in on a collaborative component, or, here's what I did. Take this over from me. However it works. If that volunteer, me in this example, if I decide, I'm not really interested. And I just stop showing up. I disappear completely. Well, none of the time that the other people spent on me is recoverable. So by me being flip, they have all lost their time on me, and I'm not going to give it back to them. So the value proposition for volunteers has to include participation by other volunteers. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit frustrating and actually quite expensive. So getting our volunteers to commit is something we're hoping to accomplish with our Agile for Volunteers policy, which went into effect for March 1st, so this month. Speaking of March coming to an end. So March 1st, our Agile for Volunteers workflow, methodology, practice, idea. It's kind of an experiment. Agile methodologies are usually applied to employees of a company working on software projects, so we are applying it to volunteers working on any projects. Anybody who knows the infamous John Matthews he has launched Agile for Business. So you can apply Agile methodologies in a business setting, not necessarily a code-specific setting. It's just people working on a project together at the end of the day. So best practices, we're really leaning into the whole team approach so that everybody participates, so that we're all sort of aware of our contribution, which hopefully will help people value the time of others. And we're also doing 2-week iterations. The word sprint is often thrown around, but the idea that a sprint is a part of a marathon is a misnomer. So I do prefer iteration. So 2-week iterations where we ask that people actually finish something in the 2 weeks. So plan to finish something and actually commit to it and do it. And at the end of 2 weeks, if we don't get anywhere near that, maybe it's time to figure out if volunteering is right for that person. So the whole idea there is not to be mean to that person, but to value the time of the people who are participating. That will almost certainly not be immediately obvious for a while, but that is the goal. Not to punish, but to value. So we'll see how that goes. By the way, we are continuing our press for more participation of non-coders. Not everything is code, not everything is an app. The whole reason we were so easily moved to change our name was not because of our interactions with Code for America, which is a horrible organization in some ways, but because we were experiencing, I am not a coder, therefore I am not welcome at Code for Vegas, which is completely and totally incorrect. So by changing to Innovate for Vegas, and we meet at the Innovation Center in the Innovation District in the Innovation Hub that is Las Vegas, the Vegas area. Changing our name is more inclusive, less specific. Innovation takes many forms. It can happen at any age, any skill set. You just have to be interested and actually do something. So that's really what we are about at the end of the day. So we're asking for creators to participate in our, I call it our 2 entrances to 1 dining room or kitchen, if you like. So we do have CodeFor.Vegas and CreateFor.Vegas. And so CodeFor and CreateFor is all about not only doing the tech and the traditional laptops and hackathons with people working on projects and coding up a storm. That's the traditional sort of the default view of the world that many people have. Anytime you say hackathon, there's always a reflex that, oh, that's some IT thing. Not true, but CodeFor leans that way. And then CreateFor.Vegas is our portal for creators, people that are not necessarily coders, but who want to contribute to projects to make our smart city smarter, to elevate our communities, to solve certain problems. Both coding and creating takes many forms. It's not instantly, writing a JavaScript application to run on a mobile phone or, whatever. It's not quite that simple. So the whole idea behind CodeFor and CreateFor resonate with people. Hopefully they don't feel a particular label is disinviting them or not including them. So they're 2 sides of the same coin. So we're really hoping to get more people interested with tangible outcomes that they can contribute to, either from the technical standpoint, hardware, software, algorithms, actual code, debugging, things like this. QA is sort of in the middle. It depends on how you look at testing, and especially if we can involve normal members of the population, actual users. It's called co-creation. So if we can actually engage with our public, the communities at large, and get them to participate by trying things out, by giving us feedback, by pointing out things that need to be fixed that we can look at, that would be wonderful. And then creatives can work on things like the human interface, the visualizations, any graphical or other creative media, documentation. People need to know how things work. And I really don't want to see ChatGPT take over that stuff. But that's a totally different... well, first of all, we'll cover AI later in this episode. But yeah, ChatGPT will almost certainly become a crutch that people use instead of writing like humans. Not looking forward to that, so we'll see what happens, but I'm sure it will make an appearance. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. Hang on. All right. We're covering a lot of ground here. It's only been 16 minutes. Hopefully you're sticking with me. We're about halfway through. So Code for Vegas, Create for Vegas, Innovate for Vegas. That's the actual foundation. Historically, Code for Vegas Foundation from last year. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving pieces. There are a few other things which I'll now cover in our fun stuff section if you're looking at the show notes. The show notes for this episode are a little bit more detailed than previously. There's just because I threw a bunch of stuff together for today's kind of month-end wrap-up. We are having a hackathon. As I record this, we're having a hackathon tomorrow, 25 and 26 March, our usual monthly hackathon meetup. So I'm hoping next week, if I cannot get Mary Norris, I will see if anyone who actually was at the hackathon would like to take some time and we can talk about what a hackathon is, how we share ideas, and so on. So let's get to the fun stuff and we can get on to the weekend. I visited the BattleBots studio here in Las Vegas on Wednesday. Totally interesting. Had a great chat with Keith Wright. Thanks to him, studio manager, and he wears a lot of hats. He and I had very interesting conversations about materials, mechanical, when things break, so failure analysis. We talked about software and hackathons and building and fixing robots and using various pieces of machinery to accomplish these things, and the arena and bulletproof glass and video production, the Challenger incident. So a lot of stuff. Really interesting guy, really interesting location. The stuff they're doing is pretty kind of fun. So we'll see where that goes. I don't want to divulge too much at this time, but good times in general. Great visit. Thanks to Keith. I posted on LinkedIn, of course, the awful way of engaging people here in Las Vegas. We need our own website, which I'll get to in a moment. I mentioned ChatGPT. I'm not really a giant fan. It is a tool. If you want to summarize some text, great. If you want to tack on a make it fun or make it fictional or make it ridiculous, you can do that. It's almost like there used to be some quote generators or some other text manipulation or audio manipulation that would apply filters to content and change it to different styles of writing. They were very simple. They were pattern matching and text replacements and so on. So this takes it obviously to 10 extra levels above that. And that's fine. I think that's a great use of where we are now. I think the problems arise when ChatGPT is doing work for someone that the person that's driving that doesn't understand or take the time to review or learn from. So if you're volunteering, for example, for one of our projects and ChatGPT does all the work, then ChatGPT was volunteering. And some might, well, I wrote the prompts, I did the other parts. Well, okay, but ChatGPT composed a piece of code or a block of text or whatever the case may be. And the work is being done from other people contributing to the model. There's the manager of a group is rarely responsible for the work of the group being managed, right? So the person authoring a prompt is managing the work that ChatGPT returns and then taking credit for it. That doesn't seem right to me. Maybe that's a discussion to be had another time, but I'm really looking forward to people contributing their own creativity using the tools. If you're a coder, you certainly don't hand compile your various pieces of software. If you are a creative person, you probably don't weave together a canvas to paint on, or mix your own paints from pigments found out in the wild, or collect clay for sculpting. There's a whole list of things that we take advantage of, standing on the shoulders of giants, as Sir Isaac Newton was known to say. It's how you see farther and further. But there's a difference between using tools and not doing actual work, right? Taking a picture of another picture is not being a photographer. It is being a copier, photocopier, I guess. So that'll be an interesting thing. But we do want to actually use AI for some things. So, for example, if we take my favorite project, Open Transit, and we parse all of the documentation, if you will, but all the descriptions of how RTC policies work, all the expectations of rider responsibilities and so on, and you connect these things with routing information and schedules and so on. If that becomes a corpus to train a model on, a specific model for use with passenger interaction, or to answer questions in general before people even come to visit our oasis in the desert, then someone might say, well, how do I get from the airport to Treasure Island? You can certainly use Google Maps, but maybe they would be comfortable asking in a different language and getting a response that they can actually read and understand and consume as a useful set of directions when they get here. So it's not something as ethereal and mysterious even as routes and bus stops, some bus stops that are not actually bus stops because the GTFS information is not current. But if we can actually connect people with this information and use AI to generate usable interfaces to existing documentation and so on, that form of summarizing and constructing useful responses, that is great. That's using a tool in a completely appropriate way. And so these are the sorts of explorations that will probably commence to integrate this sort of functionality. And there are plenty of open source solutions. There's plenty of content on which to base these things. Another idea is to, using our Smart Social project, is to come up with a summary that we can generate using the corpus of the Smart Social data to train a model, or to, not to train it, but to use as the corpus of text or source information. Not even mentioning the fact that there's all this open data. Not all of it is text. There's obviously a lot of geographical, latitudes, longitudes, shapes, place marks, right? Place marks with shape data or individual points, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of data that we can use as corpus information for presenting to people. So using it as a tool, wonderful. But I'm really not looking forward to generating entire tools. If we want to do that, we can leave people out completely. That's a little editorial. We are pursuing a couple of things in the hardware space. So we have an ongoing smart bus pass idea that we conceived during our Williot guest appearance at our February hackathon. It could be interesting, especially in light of, that will make sense in a second. Our discussions at the Connected City Tour on the 23rd included a presentation from Signify, which makes the light fixtures that you see in so many places. Disclaimer, I used to work for Philips, and Philips Lighting is now Signify. So I knew some of the people that are still around or proximal in Eindhoven and other places. I was familiar with their luminaires. The luminaire that they are talking about is essentially the light bulb and the part around it. The light bulb is a simplification. So if you have giant outdoor lighting that's lighting up a street or a park, and you include right next to that a Bluetooth transceiver or some Wi-Fi, maybe a CBRS antenna. You can attach a lot of things to these modules that they then place at the top of poles, or maybe at a bus stop, or maybe in a park, or anywhere really. So if we make use of the battery-less and very low-cost smart bus pass option that we were discussing, and that Bluetooth tag device can interact with Luminaire Bluetooth transceivers at bus stops, for example, then when a bus driver is approaching a bus, they would know that there are people waiting before they even get there. Before they even turn the corner, they'll know that there are 3 or 4 or 5 people waiting. And maybe it's dark, and maybe that light is only lighting a certain area and they're not standing in it because it's cold or it's hot. Who knows? So connecting passengers to transit using available technology is something to think about. So in addition to that, we have other hardware ideas. We have some RISC-V hardware that I received, and we'll make use of that in a microfarm project to get going on local sustainable food, edible vegetables, basically. We're not going to be, not a micro ranch, a microfarm where we can explore water conservation. We can explore how you create and maintain locally sourced foods, maybe in your home. And we can greater understand the nature of agricultural tech or ag tech. How do we apply technology to these things? Then how do we express how these work to the general public so they know how they can do it too? So that's where the creative angle comes in. How do we get people to understand what we are doing and how they can join in? Who doesn't want to grow their own basil? I know I do. So our accessibility project is another thing that I really want to kind of bring back to the front burner, so to speak. It was something that I proposed in 2022, got a little pushback that it was not interesting. And to that I say, only not interesting if you do not need these things. And I have various pictures of accessibility issues in Las Vegas, and I've shown them to people. And the people who get it, get it. The people who don't will. And so the sooner we start tackling getting around Las Vegas for people who don't necessarily have 100% mobility, and that includes visual, audio, anything really. If you can't participate in our smart city, then we are failing. So we want to take a look at that and have an ongoing part of the open data capture platform, for example, to keep track of these things so that we know there's problems and we know when they're fixed, and the general population will also know. We have a bunch of websites. We probably have not done a great job of letting people know because there is no content there. Why is there no content? Well, see volunteering on projects above. There have been a variety of attempts at, I call it throwing things over the fence. So, hey, I want to work on the website. Here's some stuff. I'm going to disappear now. That is a difficult way to do business. So our websites have been the work of one person, and when he's not doing this podcast, he's doing 25 other things. So someday, a little collaboration will go a long way. Everything is a work in progress. One person can do many things, not all at the same time, but we do have coming up. How about that? Coming up, our Innovate for Vegas transition from CodeForVegas.org. We have our calendar project that needs to be embedded in that. We have the Startup Hotline project that is withered substantially because our volunteers working on that disappeared. We have our CodeFor and CreateFor Vegas portals that will hopefully draw some participation and some creativity to design those to fit their audiences. We have our Mastodon.Vegas launch, so we can bring back some social media in a federated fashion. We have, what else is there? We have our Beta Labs platform to get going when we have some volunteers wrap up some projects. So the list is long. There's a lot of stuff to do. Me, myself, and I are presently engaged, and we will do much better with at least 1 or 2 other people, maybe 5. We should be looking at ways to communicate more effectively. So our our Smart Social project addresses this, and it will integrate not only with our Mastodon server launch, with Matrix, which I'm planning to put on top of the Mastodon server. So Mastodon does not support direct messages in the way that Twitter does, which is much easier to manage from a privacy standpoint. There is nothing secret as far as tweets, also known as toots, or status updates in the Mastodon world. So if you post something on Mastodon, if you send someone a direct message, you're really just adding them. So if I send a Mastodon direct message to Innovate for Vegas Foundation, it is still visible to anyone, but it's directed at Innovate for Vegas. So this means there's no issues with, hey, you're reading my DMs. There's no issue with warrants and subpoenas and other such things. You can just read it right now. You can see who wrote that and who they sent it to and so on. If we then tack on a Matrix server so that people can send private messages and associate with their accounts, then we enable end-to-end encryption without the ability to share it with anyone also. So I know Twitter someday, at some point, perhaps is going to enable encrypted direct messaging. In the meantime, who knows who's reading what? All manner of chaos over there. So transparency is one of our watchwords. People will be able to see how things work. They'll know policies and so on. So it'll be an interesting experiment to see how our smart city can talk to itself. Our Smart Social project has some ideas having to do with calendaring and contacts and discovering information. We can integrate some AI, as I mentioned. So some cool stuff. There's a lot of potential that we are working on. And when I say we, I am speaking of all of the people talking right now. But we'll see who shows up for our hackathon tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to a couple of the people who said they were coming, actually coming. So we can actually progress. We'll kick off our first 2-week iteration of we'll call it we call it an iteration. You would call it, if you're an Agile person and you use the jargon, you might call it a sprint. But it's a 2-week period of time. We'll have 2 weeks to complete the things that we commit to up front. And as anyone who uses Agile knows, you don't necessarily finish your story points, for example, but you may actually accomplish something, and we can actually advance our project or projects or the pieces that make them up. That's ultimately the goal. And then eventually these things appear on resumes and get people hired for jobs or get them moving towards solving real problems and being noteworthy in the ways that people should be for actually making the world a better place, and so on and so on. So I think we're coming to the end, believe it or not. It has been about 33 minutes by my clock here. So I thank you for listening. As always, I did put in the show notes some links to our GitHub. We do have a Discord server that nobody uses. That's fun. Did you know we are a 501c3 nonprofit public charity, which means we're a nonprofit in the state of Nevada. We are a public charity for the sake of the 501c3 status determination with the IRS. It means you can make tax-deductible donations to support our efforts, our projects, when we have some to show you. So we're really looking forward to being able to grow and expand some of our, even something as simple as snacks for our hackathons, which will be funded by you, the listeners, the consumers of our project output, or basically anyone who wants to support the cause. So I'll also have a donate link in the links section of our show notes if you are interested. And I will definitely include a link to our new website at the right time when it's posted. So always works in progress, everything we're doing, every aspect. And I thank you for being a part of it by listening to this, by maybe sharing it with a friend, by appearing at our monthly hackathon meetups, by coming to Tech Alley and hearing updates there, eventually by participating in our Mastodon launch, and the list continues. Whenever you are hanging out in Vegas, remember there's a whole public charity willing to make it a better, smarter city and a better Las Vegas. I hope you are too. Thank you so much. This has been Dan Hugo, Managing Director, Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Cheers.